I had always drawn as a kid, and it was also something that my mother could give me to make me shut up and sit still. So I'd always liked to draw. Whenever I would go see a film, I always wanted to draw scenes from the film afterwards. It was just always something that I gravitated towards. There were a lot of impactful things that happened to me while I was at Washington University. I think one thing that I'm really thankful that I got out of my education there was a really good grounding in art history. I took a couple classes that have stuck with me over the years. Lawrence Stiefel taught a class called Modern Painting in the Northern Romantic Tradition, which I still think about things from that class, and it still factors into what I make. Another teacher is Kim Stroman, was my freshman 2D design teacher, and I think that class and his teaching gave me a really good grounding in design principles that has stood me in good stead. I do like working with a lot of different materials. When I'm interested in new material, that sort of leads the process in terms of what the final outcome is going to be. I'll have an interest in it'd be kind of cool to try making some cement faux bois, which is how that previous body of work started. And then I start to learn how to work with it. And then that process leads to what the final outcome is in terms of a sculpture, rather than the other way around, I'd say. So sometimes the process is that a lot of my work is, if not site-specific, at least site-dependent. And there are things that eventually I start to see that run through the work. Well, I see that there's something to do with nature and artifice. And I couldn't really articulate it any further than that. But I think that is actually a thing that's still running through the work. It's like the natural world and then a human intervention on it, or a human attempt to replicate some aspect of it. I think a good example of what I'm trying to describe there is a piece I made in 1995 called For Oscar Wilde. And it was a site-specific installation for Eastern State Penitentiary, which is a disused historic prison in Philadelphia. I staged it so that as you moved through the installation, you would go through increasing degrees of artifice. So starting outside, there was a field of real sunflowers growing, and you entered into the cell block of the prison and you saw what looked like a field of lilies, which were in fact silk reproduction lilies, so artificial flowers. And then you entered into a cell that had been refurbished to address Wilde's complaints about prison. And in that cell is wallpapered in a design based on sunflowers and lilies. So you're moving through subsequent degrees of further abstraction, further removal from the original natural source. And I think that's something that I work with quite a lot in my work. I think I'm always most excited about the most recent thing I've made and the most recent body of work. I think one thing that I sort of never could have imagined would happen would be to have a show at the Hirshhorn Museum, and part of the Smithsonian. And I think part of what's so special about that is, I don't come from a family of artists really, but they do know the Smithsonian. So when I told my parents that I was going to be in a show at the Smithsonian, that actually meant something to them. I made a bunch of friends, and really great friends, deep friendships that continue to this day.